I know you're a rock guy, so I went Candlebox this time.
Oh, okay. I interviewed the singer, Kevin Martin.
You did? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I'm from
I
Seattle, actually, so I've actually had a couple Seattle people. I was very close to getting Jerry Cantrell,
oh
but then
wow.
at the last minute they're like, "No, he's not going to do it." I was like, "Ugh." But I had Kevin Martin from Candlebox. I had the drummer of the Melvins, who was also technically in Nirvana for like a short time. I had
Okay.
Tad Doyle, who's in a band called Tad. I had the singer of this band called Sweetwater. I'm trying to think of what other Seattle people I've had. I feel like I'm forgetting a couple, but yeah, those are a few of them. But yeah, I haven't been able to get any of like the big like Nirvanas or Alice in Chains or Soundgarden people. That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, Dave Grohl is on my bucket list to I've not seen the Foo Fighters and I was gonna
Oh,
go
I literally
around.
just saw them the first time ever.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, they were really good.
I've heard they do a great show. So
That
maybe I think they're gonna
drummer,
tour next year.
oh, are they already done?
Well, they're doing a run, and then I think they're doing a bigger, expanded touring next year. I think this one was kind of like a smaller, they
Oh,
not
okay.
smaller venues, but smaller run. Um,
That makes sense. Yeah, the new drummer is phenomenal, Josh Freeze, and I guess he's
yeah,
played with a bunch of bands. I think he in
hmm
Tool, or what's the other side project? Yeah, I think he was in that. He's amazing. So
yeah. I don't remember who his other ones. I know he was like they landed someone great to replace Taylor. So
yeah,
yeah, what a crazy. I think Taylor was what 50. So
it's crazy when these people are like in their 40s and 50s and they die of like drug related things. I think like just being in my 40s and just trying to like have more than like three alcoholic beverages is like stressful on my body. So I can't imagine like mixing in pills and other shit. Like it just seems like a crazy idea.
well, and we can even talk about this during the interview because my music experience is limited, but it's thanks to our mutual friend John Guarnieri with Shinedown. And so I actually was able to go out on the road last year, about 8 shows with them. I did 2 shows about 2 weeks ago, so I did a real short run
Mm-hmm.
as well. But I think a lot of it comes down to the lifestyle. Everyone thinks it's so glamorous. You're a rock star, you're a rock star for 2 hours out of 24 hours. And if you don't have shows back to back, it's even less time. And I think these guys just, they come off that high and then they're stuck in a hotel room or they're on a bus. And so they want to get that feeling of euphoria again. And unfortunately, there's a lot of enablers that have over the years been like, well, you need this pill. This will make you feel good again. And they fall for it.
Right. It's just a matter of, do you want, because I heard there's a difference. Some people, they get off stage and they're like, okay, like I'm exhausted because I just did a show. I need something to pep me up. Or it's
Right.
like, oh, I'm so amped up from the show. Now I need something to calm down and relax. So it's just
Yeah,
like,
uppers or
which one do you
downers.
prefer? Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, we're recording, so I mean, we can cut that part out if you want to
Oh,
start.
I don't know. Unless I like massively swear like crazy, keep it, which I don't, whatever, keep it all in. So no,
Okay. Yeah, this stuff's interesting. I just I kind of go
anything that
all over
comes
the
out of my
place.
mouth
Yeah.
deserve, that I deserve whatever comes after that. 'Cause I'm 46. If I don't know how to say, shut up, dude, then too bad.
Yeah. Is that something you ever worry about? I mean, even I know like at our levels, like I'm not really anything and you're not huge or anything, but like even still just having any sort of anything in the public eye, you kind of worry, or just even if you're not in the public eye, just having a reputation on social media. I feel like you could say something that you know gets you canceled from the family reunion, like, oh, don't invite him, he's an anti-vaxxer or something. It's weird.
1000%. So yes, I fully agree with everything you just said. Yeah, we live in this hypersensitive time in human history where some people can go out there and say anything they want without fear of consequence. And then I think a lot of people are like, man, I don't want to piss off this person, or I don't want to piss off that person. Or like from my vantage point, I love to write and I don't want to piss off a potential sale. It doesn't mean I put anything false out about myself, but it does mean I have to go, should I really talk about politics? Should I really talk about vaccinations? And I kind of have to put through a filter sometimes of knowing that depending on what you say, you could alienate half your potential audience,
Exactly. Yeah.
which
I
is
worry about that
ridiculous in
too, but
a way.
especially it's interesting with podcasts because I like it to be kind of unfiltered, and I like having different opinions. I think that's the whole
Yeah,
point of the podcast is like, I think that is the place where you can discuss politics in a respectful way. I want to hear from
right.
both sides. But yeah, I think it's like sometimes like I'm like, oh boy, like people see that I had Ted Nugent on my show and they're like automatically there's a judgment there already. But
Right.
I mean, they don't know I've had people that a lot of the people, a lot of musicians I interview and comedians especially are very liberal. So I've had the other side too. And
Right.
it's interesting because I think people want to put other people in a box, of conservative or liberal, and that they're all this certain way. But like, if you get down and talk to people and just have a conversation, most people
Mhm.
aren't. They're just trying to get by, and they're trying to help people. They're all
Yeah.
mostly good on both sides, so it's kind of weird.
Fully agree. Yeah, there's that echo chamber effect out there that um it's so polarized and people think, well, if you voted for Biden, you've got to be dementia like him and you must be the enemy. Or if you voted for Trump, you've got to be this horrible person that will do anything at any cost. And I think the vast majority of people that voted for either of those two candidates are actually probably fairly similar. They just maybe have, differences on certain things.
Yeah,
But could they
it's the
sit down at a
extremes
family?
that are that are the loudest, and
And
that's
they're
what,
the ones that get the attention,
yeah,
unfortunately.
because of the algorithms on social media. And so I'm learning this too because with a
Yeah.
podcast, like if I don't talk about, I feel like if I don't have like a crazy guest on, or we don't talk about something, like especially with the rock stuff, like if they don't gossip or like say something outrageous, nobody cares. It's really weird.
Right. Yeah.
Talk
No,
about
I
song structure and writing a song and like, your creative inspiration and things like that, or like your, like I think I find stuff like inspiration and people's stories, like how they went from like, they were growing up poor or whatever, and now they're a
mhm,
big rock star. I find that path fascinating. But
yeah,
like, it seems like if I post clips like something like that, inspirational, nobody cares. It's really
yeah.
weird.
I totally understand that. Yeah. And I'm the same way. I like to see, you like to see the underdog story. You like to see someone that started. When I was out last year, and I only met him once or twice backstage, but Jelly Roll was opening for Shinedown.
Wow.
And totally cool person to meet. He actually, when first time I met him, he called me Mr. Bishop, and I was like, whoa, that's my dad. No, 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 please don't call me Mr. Bishop. But he has one of those stories of someone that really as a youth got himself in a lot of trouble, made some very poor choices, spent quite a lot of time in jail. And you look at him now, he's completely turned his life around in the sense of on a better path and inspiring people. And I see clips, on social media and stuff, and he's going to detention centers and he's talking to these kids that were on the same path he was on and telling them, hey, there's another way you can do this. And so using the fame that he's achieved for something, quite remarkable.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that
Yeah.
about him. That's really fascinating. I love that kind of stuff. It's interesting
Hmm.
too with the whole like and I hate the term cancel culture, but whatever you want to call it, where I think the worst is when it's one thing if somebody says something inappropriate or does something, especially if it's illegal, then yes, they should face the consequences. But I hate this like, hey, let's dig up things in people's history and past and say, look at this terrible thing this person did, because it's interesting. I'll try to share if I can find it. I saw this meme today and it was just, I kept thinking about it. I was at the grocery store and I was like, oh, I really like this. It's okay. Here it is. It says, cringing at your past just means you have improved as a person.
Hmm.
I'm like, that's spot on. Like, because that's when I look at
Hmm.
my past, I go, oh God, why did I do like I've kind of canceled myself. I'm like, yeah, I've done so much stupid stuff, but isn't that
Right.
how you grow as a person, is by learning from your mistakes?
Nobody lives a life that's just right along the path that doesn't ever say anything offensive. Or I mean, heaven forbid they could put a chip, which I think Musk is working on, or put a chip in your head and they can hear what you think. Because I think a lot of these people that are canceling other people and pontificating about how great you should be, yeah, they're probably walking on the street going, I'm better than that person, or look at that piece of trash, or God knows what they're probably saying inside their head. They might not say it with their mouth, but gets to be a fine line when you're judging people internally. You just don't have the courage to say it maybe out loud. And I don't know.
Isn't that what's so
Crazy.
and that's what's so fascinating? I feel like that's kind of just like a microcosm for our society right now. There's a lot of that going on, especially with the politics and stuff. And I'll be fair to both sides here because I'll give you two examples. Like you got the Lauren Boebert thing where she's she's saying all this family value stuff and we need to, set examples for our kids and all this. And then she gets caught in a play, getting her boobs grabs and hand jobs and all this stuff, doing all this crazy stuff, right? So you got her, and then you got
Right.
like people like Pelosi who are saying like, oh, these evil rich people, we need to, go after them, and they're too greedy and they need to pay their fair share. But then she's doing all this crazy stock stuff on the side and getting rich herself. So it's like, why can't we all just admit, hey, you know what? It feels good to get your boobs grabbed in a play. And also, I like money. Money is great. Like
Right.
instead of judging other people for being too rich or too horny, like why can't we all just say, you know what? We're all human. We all make mistakes. Right? I mean,
I 100 100%. 100%. Well, the politician wise, though, it's interesting because I think, and I've studied politics a lot, obviously. I write my first, The Body Man, the first one that came out was a political thriller. Ransomed Daughter is more of a suspense kidnapping type thing. And there's not really much politics. It's also very short. It's a novella, so didn't have a chance to dive into it. But from a political standpoint, I've studied it a lot and I've gotten a lot more jaded as I've gotten older. But when it started off, hundreds of years ago now, and I realized it was a long time ago, but it wasn't a job. It was really, now people might have gotten to politics because they could help their farm or help their law practice or whatever. Absolutely. I don't think that they walked around perfect human beings, but they were in Washington. It wasn't even Washington at first, but they were in the Capitol for very short periods of time. They came in, did their job, and their main income was from whatever their way of life was. Now, complete 180 degrees, people go into Washington with very little money comparatively. And, 20 years later, they come out and they're worth 50 million or 100 million. It's like, how do you do that on a $160,000 salary? Well, maybe what's going to hit on the stock market, or maybe there was a congressman, and I can't remember his name. He got arrested and charged. They found stacks of money in his freezer in DC
is
years
this the
ago.
guy with the gold coins and stuff in his
Maybe it might have been gold coins too, but it was just
was
that's
it?
where he piled
Yeah.
his money that was, from illicit
Yeah.
gains or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
payoff money.
And I don't think, I mean, again, I'm going to say, I bet you that's going on both sides. I'm sure there's some good people that don't play
Absolutely.
that game, but I think a majority of them do play the game. And I think we'd be shocked if we only hear like snippets here and there, and this guy went down and this guy goes down. But I bet a lot of them just get away with it. And it's
Hmm.
kind of one of those things where they both sides kind of look the other way. I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
could be wrong. Maybe I'm jaded, but it definitely seems like there's some shady stuff going on. I wish that would they just have term limits. I think both sides could agree to that. I mean, do we really
Yes.
want the Dianne Feinsteins and the Mitch McConnells still there with, I mean, they're clearly have issues and should be in
Oh,
retirement homes.
hold on, Mitch McConnell.
Yeah. I mean, he just
I'll
freezes
just stay like this for about 20 minutes. You
and
keep
then he
talking.
still stays in, and he hasn't stepped down. Like back in the, and the same like back in the day with like these scandals and saying like the Lauren Boebert, like you're done, like you're going to step down. And it's like,
I
she's
know.
like, no, I'm still here. I'm not going. Okay.
Well, and there's the Republican guy. I can't remember his name. Not King. Oh, he's a younger guy out of New York City. He's under investigation where like his whole past was fraudulent.
Oh
He
yeah. The
said he had these
George
jobs.
something. I forget his name. Yeah.
Santos, maybe.
Santos. Yeah. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But
Thing.
instead of saying, "Hey, you know what? I lied. Hey, I kind of fudged the truth. I really wanted to serve my people and all that." No, these people go all in and say, "This is horrible what they're doing to me. They're attacking me viciously. I haven't done anything wrong." And it's like, it doesn't look that way. So
Yeah. That's the thing. I think it goes back to the extremes, and it would be nice if the parties could call out their own bullshit within the parties, and they could
yeah,
say, you know what, this person they're one of our members, but we don't like what they did, and yeah, that would be nice to see that. My slogan for politics, what I would love to see is make politics boring again, because 5 years ago I didn't know who all these Congress people were, senators or
right.
attorney generals, and I didn't know any of this shit. I mean, I knew the president and I knew the vice president, I don't even know if I knew all the governors. Like I lived in Arizona. I don't know if I knew who the governor was. I mean, that's how uninvolved I was because I didn't give a shit. And now it's like,
Right.
but I also feel like the world is so crazy right now. You kind of have to pay attention or it's gonna like I
Yeah.
don't know. Like I'm just scared. So I'm always like wondering, like, okay, what's gonna happen next? And I'm watching the news a lot more than whereas before I just didn't. I was like, yeah, things life is fine. Who cares?
Right. So I was during COVID, I live in North Carolina now, like not far from where I was, but during COVID, I was in the middle of going through a separation and stuff, and I was in South Carolina. I knew who the governor was. He was a Republican guy, which I've always leaned Republican. I've changed over the years. I'm probably more libertarian now, but I don't even know that I voted for him when I was there. I couldn't even tell you. Probably not. Who knows? Didn't care. I just knew who he was and thought, whatever, he's just some old Republican. Then COVID hit, and his response during COVID was very much like, hey, you have personal freedom. We're not going to tell you you can't go to this place or this place has to shut their doors. And his name's Henry McMaster, who's still the governor down in South Carolina. But my respect for him grew just because he wasn't doing some overreaching. And that, no matter what side people fall on COVID or vaccinations or any of that stuff, I appreciated the fact that he was like, "Hey, we're going to let you make your own choices. You're grown adults." And because it was, so strange that one store would require a mask or would have these stipulations, and then you could walk literally into the next store and there was none. It was just like, well, the virus isn't gonna choose which one it's gonna like go and wear everything. And it was such a bizarre time. But McMaster, for his credit, was pretty good on how he handled it, in my opinion. Of course,
Right.
opinions are,
Well, and that's the because that's the
varied.
thing is like I know a lot of people who are more liberal who were not pro lockdown and vaccine and all that stuff. But then there
Right.
were some that were very pro vaccine and all that stuff and they felt like that you didn't care if you didn't get the vaccine that you were killing grandma and all this and
Mm,
I think some people flipped and now but there's still some people that are still into all that getting the multiple boosters and things. And it was a
yeah.
weird time. And you're right, it was so inconsistent, different states, different things. And then even here, it was like we have the reservations, and then the reservations is federal land. So
Hmm.
they were very strict, and it was a very
Yeah.
big issue on the reservations. For whatever reason, I think some places on the reservation don't have running water, so they couldn't wash their hands. So COVID was
Wow.
raging on the reservations. It was really sad, and
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I just would. That's the time where I looked and went and said, "Oh boy, I'm so glad I am not like a governor or something like." Because like
I know.
either way, no matter what you said, you're gonna piss people off. You're gonna if
Yep.
you said, "Hey, we're locking down," you pissed off the people. If you said, "Hey, we're not locking down," you're pissing people off. So it was like it was
Right.
just a mess.
Yeah. There was no way to win in that situation. I do agree. So you're in Arizona, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, from Washington originally, and so I had a lot of family in Washington, and they were not happy. A lot. It seemed like a lot of people were not happy with the governor, but he somehow he keeps winning elections. I don't know. It's interesting. I go back there and like my hometown Seattle. I just remember the first time I came back one time to visit for a Seahawks game and I was like I saw these blue tarps and I thought,
Hmm.
"Oh, okay, like there's some tailgating going on already." I was like, "That's it's really early for the." And then I looked closer and I was like, "Wait, what is it? That's like camp. Those are people camping like they're living
Yeah.
there. This is like." And then that was a thing and now it's just gotten out of control with the homeless. It's just all over downtown Seattle and then it's where they like kind of cleaned it up for the All-Star game, but now I
Hmm.
think it's creeping back in
Coming back.
and now it's starting to come down here in Phoenix and
Yeah.
it's just all over the country. I don't know. It's like so I think about all these things
Yeah.
and it's like I'm trying to, again, do podcasts and live on my life, but it's like this stuff's on my mind a lot. Just I feel like
Sure.
it's like I don't know if it's like the term is woke because I feel like I've woken up and I'm looking around and concerned. But I'm not trying to say like, oh, we need to do this. I don't know what the solutions are. I just know that this is not the same America that I grew up in the 80s and
No.
90s.
So my son's 16, and he has several adults over the years have told him he has an old soul, which is really true. He's a great young man, but he gets frustrated with me because, like, Dad, I was born in '76. He's like, Dad, you grew up in the '80s. The '80s was like the best decade. I've grown up in the 2000 and the 2010s. This sucks. He doesn't do social media. He has a phone, but his phone watching is more like YouTube videos for karate. He's big into karate. He's big into playing guitar. So he's really enjoyed, those activities, but he doesn't do like music wise, he doesn't listen to anything like modern in the last 10 years. Everything is like pre, first show I took him to in 2010. No, it wasn't 2010. Sorry. He was 10. So it was 2017. I took him to see U2 Joshua Tree 30th anniversary tour in Louisville. It was a great show. I had people next to me that were looking at me. They're like, is this his first show? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you've ruined this child. How is he gonna, what comes next? So what came next was a couple years ago. Of course, COVID kind of messed things up in the sense of live music and entertainment for a good stretch. And then coming out of that first show I took him to was the Rolling Stones. I had never seen the Stones.
Oh yeah, I
They're
heard
really
you say
fun.
that was really good though, right?
Amazing. That was so freaking. It was up at Charlotte at the Panther Stadium. They put on one of my probably top 5 concerts, and I've been to a lot of concerts. It just, I think part of it was the nostalgia of actually seeing them, but it wasn't seeing a bunch of geriatrics running around with air masks and stretchers. Mick was going up and down that stage, but I would have passed out. He was hustling and sounded good. Of course, Charlie had just passed away, so that was the first time they had played. I think it was like show 3 or 4 since Charlie he died previous to that, but show 3 or 4 without him. And then the next show I took him to after the Rolling Stones was I took him to see Bon Jovi, and I had never seen Bon Jovi, so I got floor tickets. It cost me an arm and a leg, and we rocked out to Bon. I had such a fun time. It was a Friday night up in Charlotte. I'm kind of in between Charlotte and Greenville and Asheville. I'm in this triangle area. We had so much fun that I didn't have him the next Monday, and they were playing in Greenville. So I jumped on Ticketmaster and got another floor ticket by myself and went, because it's like, well, I've never seen Bon
Oh,
Jovi. I might as well see them twice in 4 days if, because it's probably the last time I'll see them.
how were they
Um,
sounding though? Because I know there was a thing that came out. It might have been like 2021, where there was a clip of John Bon Jovi, and he wasn't singing that great. But I don't. I feel like sometimes maybe that they just have an off night or something, or I don't know. How do you sound when you saw him?
so in person, it was an awesome concert. And I filmed a bunch. I'm one of those annoying people that will film stuff on my phone that I know some people despise.
The whole
And
thing, or just like clips?
oh, no, 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 no. I'll just do clips here and there of
Okay.
songs. We were like 12 rows back, so we were maybe 15. We were close. Um, I thought it was amazing. The next night I went and played, after he went back to his mom's, I pulled up some clips and listened. And then I was like, holy cow, that doesn't sound as good as I remember it sounding last night. And I've even talked to some musicians that I know about him. Yeah, John's voice is the backup singers and everyone that's kind of doing the choruses and stuff, I think really helped pull it together. But I don't know his voice. I just saw I took my son to see Guns N' Roses back in August, and that's not 1980s Axl. It's 1980s Slash. The guitar was freaking amazing. But Axl's voice had changed, but it was still the nostalgia, still hearing, Welcome to the Jungle and November Rain and You Could
Yeah.
Be Mine and
There's
everything.
just certain songs where it's like he just can't hit those notes anymore. And it's like,
No.
I mean, even at 60% Axel though is still probably better than most people. But I mean, the way they
Right.
sang that stuff in the 80s, it was like it's insane. I mean, unless you're
Yeah.
like Steven Tyler or one of those kind of people, then you can still do it, but it's hard.
But even Steven. So Steven's out. We were supposed to see Aerosmith 2 nights actually.
Mm.
Tonight was because I think it was tonight, or is it next Tuesday? No, it was tonight. Tonight was originally the scheduled Charlotte show because when I finally was able to schedule with you, it was because the Aerosmith show's been postponed till next year. And so they had to cancel most of this tour this year because of Steven's voice. But the first couple nights they were playing in this tour back in early September or whatever it was, he sounded solid. The clips I heard online were really good. So, but yeah, for Axel, the fact that he can still talk at his age with the sounds that emanated from his voice every night that he played, amazing that he still has any voice. Just yeah, just and you have to temper it. So because we saw the Eagles, again, we kind of the last year and a half it was kind of like make up for lost time. So if a big band came through. We saw Garth Brooks, saw the Eagles. Of course, we saw a bunch of Shinedown shows. I took him to those with me.
But don't you like
then,
the smaller shows better than because I saw like the stadium tour, I saw Guns N' Roses. I've seen we saw the Foo Fighters, so we've seen those big shows, but I really like more the smaller club theater shows so much more. It's so much more intimate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the intimacy, and yeah, just when you're way far back, you're just, you have to like look to see them. So
Or you're watching
you're
the
watching the
TV.
screens.
Yeah, that's why I tell my friends,
Yeah,
like, because he was trying to get I can't remember what row he was in the Foo Fighters, but I said, look, if you're not in the first like 15 or 20 rows, you might as well just buy the cheap seats because you're gonna watch the screen the whole time anyways.
correct. 100%.
I learned that because I spent really like a lot on Paul McCartney, but we were
Okay,
like, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 rows back, but I was like, wait, I'm like still just watching the screen.
you're
So
still
like,
watching the screen.
and it
Yeah.
was really expensive just to get that. But I was like, it's
Hmm.
almost like you either need like the first 15 rows or like nosebleeds.
Absolutely. My son and I, so the we're ending this year by we're flying to Vegas. We're going to see you two at the Sphere.
Yeah, that
It
I saw pictures of that and videos online. It looked insane.
looks
I want to
amazing.
see a concert there for sure.
And we have floor tickets. So my son thinks we're going to well, they're not letting you sleep overnight. I think last I saw was you can go the morning of the show at like 8 a.m. and they'll give you a numbered wristband. And then you come back at like 5:30, and based on your number, they'll let you in. Cause he's like, Dad, we got to get rail. And I'm like,
I feel like
yeah.
even if you're in the back, I feel like it's going to be amazing though.
I think after all the video that's come out, because I bought those tickets back in June, or it's been a while, and before you saw any of the videos, and actually now the videos have come out, I think probably if you're like second level, because I think it's like a 3 or 4 level tiered, it's almost like a Death Star
Yeah.
inside. It looks like the Death Star. I think if you're second tier is probably the best. So it's either going to be first or second person, up to the rail, or you might as well be in the second row, and probably the second section in the back would probably be best because then you'll get to see the whole
Yeah.
visual.
Because I feel
Yeah.
like that's like a thing where if you're in the movie theater and you have a front row ticket, you're having to watch like this. And that is not fun. Like you're gonna
Yeah, don't go see
neck,
strip tease like that. It's not it'll hurt your neck. So
Yeah. It's like too much. You gotta be
overrated.
a little bit of a buffer with that.
Yeah, so it'll
Yeah.
be fun. So I kind of wish I had, but although I think the tickets back there were actually the floor tickets were some of the cheaper tickets, and maybe that's why. Maybe because it kind of you're going to have to take your eyes off the stage to look around and see everything. But it looks incredible, and I'll let you know once I go and tell you how it was. But it'll be a good way to end our run this year. So.
Do you do are you a sports fan too? I thought I saw you with like a Broncos jersey. Are you a Broncos fan?
Yeah, I'm a Broncos. Unfortunately, the last couple of years, yes, I like the Broncos. Yeah, I was out, so I stopped following much sports for years. The girl I married was not really into it, and I kind of did what a lot of guys, not a lot, but some do, is they'll kind of like, oh yeah, you don't like sports, so I kind of pulled away for a while. And then when everything kind of went south, I'm like, man, I miss watching football, or I miss, going to baseball games. So not basketball. My interest in basketball waned once dating myself, once Michael Jordan stepped away. I don't know. In the LeBron era, I've been to like 2 or 3 games. I've maybe watched an NBA final years back, but yeah,
What
I don't
about
know. Not in the
college
basketball.
basketball? Because that's what I found myself. I've always
Yes.
really loved the March Madness. And then
Yes.
now I just find myself even just really even more into the March Madness, but even before March Madness, just college basketball in general, the games are so short and quick and they're just so
Right.
fun. They're so fast paced. It's great.
Well, and I think, yes, you're completely right. And I think part of that is because those guys are hustling and they're giving it everything they have because they want
Yeah.
the $100 million contract.
Right.
You get the 100 million contract, when you have filet every night, filet doesn't taste as good after 20 nights, But if
Yeah.
if
No,
you
it's
get
like,
filet once every 2 months, man, I'll bust my ass to get that filet. And I think that's what happens with collegiate sports, even like football too. College football to me is a lot times much more enjoyable and it's very
oh,
fast
yeah,
paced
I love it. I
compared to the
agree.
NFL.
That was like when you say about the basketball NBA players, I'm trying to remember because when I first moved down here, Shaq was on the Suns,
Yeah.
and I got like a free ticket to a game, and I went and watched him. I forget what they called him, but they had a nickname because he was literally walking back and forth on the court. I was like, I've never seen an NBA player
Just
hustle so
walk.
little. And I forget what did they call it? It was like some like derogatory nickname for him, but it was so funny because he
I know
just
he's
seemed
been
like he
called
just didn't give a
Diesel.
shit. What's that?
I know they called him Diesel at some point, Shaq Diesel. I'm trying to remember all this. He's had a bunch of nicknames though. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember which ones were derogatory, but yeah, that would be.
It was, oh my God, he has so many nicknames. Holy cow.
He's
Like
not.
Google Shack
He's a cool
nickname.
one too, though. He's a doctor. He's gone back to his, someone that didn't come from very much and continued his further education and became a doc. He got a doctor in some sort of, I think, business field or something. But he is
Really?
Doctor Shaquille O'Neal, technically speaking. Yeah,
Well, doesn't he
great businessman too.
he gives money back. Like I saw something
Yep.
about how, a lot of these guys they make these really expensive shoes, and he wanted his shoes to be able to be afforded by poor people. So he made them like really cheap and put them in
Mhm.
Walmart. But he's
Yep.
made a bunch of money because tons of poor people will buy his shoe, and so he's actually been really successful with it. But also able to sell his shoes to poor people, which is kind of
Right.
cool if you think about it.
Well, if you can sell 5 million people a $40 shoe, you're going to make more money than selling 5,000 people a shoe that's $5,000.
Right.
I mean, your market, if you can go lower in that economic side, the numbers will actually work for you. Jordan probably blows that one up because Jordan's made a bazillion dollars. Although Jordan made his billions now post NBA just selling the basketball team this last year. I think he made like 3 billion or whatever his final cut was for that. It was a
Did you
lot of
see
money.
the show with him, or or about him, with like
Yes,
Matt Damon and all that? It was so fascinating. Like he was so smart, or his parents, whoever it was, I think it was kind of his parents, his mom,
parents.
kind
Yeah.
of doing the business dealing about the shoe and how he would take a percentage of it. It was so
Yep.
smart, and I mean, like she knew he was that good. The mom
Hmm.
knew. The mom believed it, like that he was really good. But it's like, how do you know that? Because everybody thinks they're going to be, or their kid's going to be the next big thing, and most of them
Right.
aren't. And but she called it.
Well, I guess if enough parents believe in it, one of them is going to be the one that hits. And so if you get 1,000 of them that do it and you get the one that hits it, like, hey, see, I knew it was going to happen. Well, the
Yeah,
999 thought it was going to happen
yeah.
too.
But do you think there's some that the parents know? They're like, let's just take the lump sum because we're not going to sell a lot of shoes for this guy. He's going to be out of the league in 3 years.
Possibly, yeah. It kind of depends, I guess, on their business, how they are with business, and there is also the other thing too is there's just some talents out there that just rise above, the Michael Jordans of the world, the Tiger Woods of the world. There's ones that, and I think those sparks for those talents, first of all, they're made from hard work. There's a natural ability, I think, there for a lot of them, but like in Tiger Woods' case, his father Earl, just since he was like 18 months old, put golf club in his hand and started showing him, and then made him mentally tough. And like I've seen some documentaries on Tiger, and I think in some ways his dad was cruel to him, but it made him so freaking mentally tough. Where a golfer is going down a fairway and getting heckled, they screw up their next shot. I don't think Tiger Woods hears the voices. Or if he does, he can compartmentalize and block them out. Um,
But
but
don't you
then, of
think there was
course,
a price for that? That he was very good at golf, but mentally off the green, he was fucked up, right? He had
I,
the pill issue, and he had the sex addiction, or whatever you call it, cheating on his beautiful wife, and he had some issues that he had to
yeah, I'd
go
have
deal
trouble
with.
telling Elon, "Hey, take a hike." I'm gonna, yeah, no. Well, I think part of that comes down to when someone is given such a great ability, I think it's wired in our DNA, however you want to look at it, that they're gonna have some sort of a flaw. And if that flaw really is a vice that is bad enough or strong enough, it can bring you down. And I mean, Tiger's case, I think the pills were because of what he did to himself physically, because, he came up in an era where golfers a lot of times look like me. They look like a middle-aged guy. He transformed his
And
body
white
into looking like
too.
a linebacker.
Yeah.
And and to do that though, he put a lot of stress with extra muscle and everything. He put a lot of stress on his back and on his legs. And then when things popped and things broke, it was almost cascading where and for the last 10 years, it's just been one injury after another. And he's missed 8 months or a year of a season because he's done that. And I think a lot of that came down to the torque that he put on his body. So maybe you should just stay the middle-aged guy. Maybe you'll last longer, but
Yeah, it
you
makes you
won't have the
think.
$1 billion though. So
I mean, you see these examples of people who are very successful and they seem to be very well balanced and they don't have all these issues. And then you see a lot of examples where people are successful, but there's all these, they're dealing with all these either drug issues or
right.
divorces or, some other sort of addiction issues or health issues or, obesity or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, it's hard to be perfect, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's like we were talking about before. I think like from musician standpoint, especially when they achieve, the average musician that's out there is not making much money, and they might be really talented. I go to local breweries and stuff on the weekends, and you get people up there playing guitar or singing. You're like,
Oh, yeah.
man, this person's really good, and they're probably making $100 for the gig.
Yeah. You ever
Versus
been to Nashville or Austin?
I have, but I've not been to the. I have been twice, but I've not been down to where all the music and where you can go from one bar to another and hear like an amazing. I've heard about it and seen videos, but where an amazing performance, and that person's just struggling to pay their rent. They might be living in their car, and then you have Taylor Swift, who her tours generated, I think, $3 billion this year alone.
She started
It's
out in Nashville playing at like coffee shops that are or whatever.
exactly.
You ever seen those pictures of her where she's just like, it's like Taylor Swift. It looks like somebody just made it with like a spray
Yeah,
paint or something, like her sign. And it's like, it's crazy to see how she went from that to where she is now.
where she is now, exactly. And I think that should give people, because I kind of look at that in the writing world, which the creative side I think has a lot of crossover. Whether you're a musician, whether you're an artist, whether you're a writer, there's a starving artist term, which is doesn't mean that one or two people are starving to do that. It's like in general, artists don't make a lot of money, but then some people get to that level where they do get to be the Taylor Swift, or they get to be, the Motley Crue, back in the 80s. And they've achieved this. And, Stephen King, for a novelist, for the past 20 years, where they achieve this really high platform and they make just a ton of money. And that's the exception to the rule.
Is that
But
the goal for you though? Is that what you want to do? Like the Tom Clancy, like is that what you're trying to do? Cause I know you have a day job, right? You do like finance or something. This is
yep,
the novels, like it's kind of like your side hustle right now,
it's my
right?
side hustle. Yeah. So the goal would be, I've got multiple tiers of goals that I'm trying, and I'm trying to be really, I've always been a very level-headed person, and as much as I know it's possible to be the shot and kind of be that one in a million, that lightning in a bottle can happen to someone, that that happens to 1% of 1%. So I try to be very like grounded of, okay, so what long term do I want to do? Well, I'd like to be able to quit my day job.
Yeah, I think that's
So
realistic, right? I mean, just to make what you're making at your day job, but doing it writing books.
yes, I think it is realistic. It is a long-term goal though, because unfortunately, unless you get a really sizable book contract and then earn out the contract, that's the thing. People get a big contract and they think, "Well, man, I'm on easy street." Well, no, that's not the way the industry necessarily does. You'll get a set amount of money for submitting your manuscript. You'll get a set amount of money for when the book is released, and then you have to earn out your contract. You have to earn, have to have sales that justify before you'll ever see another dime, basically. Um,
Do they
so yeah,
have
at some
that
point,
issue with books the same as music? Because I know obviously musicians don't make any money off record sales anymore because of the streaming and all that. But also, I think
mhm.
before that it was illegal downloads. Like, so is there any issues with that with books? Like, is there a lot of illegal downloads that people are downloading books illegally? Or
it yeah, it definitely happens. You don't hear about it too much. Where it's starting to uh, pick up a little bit now is you're hearing a lot about AI. People taking books like, say, Tom Clancy as an example, taking a Tom Clancy book and putting it in an AI system, and then generating Clancy-esque stories that are completely modeled around what Clancy did, and just putting, putting Eric Bishop on the title.
wow, that's
People,
kind of crazy. That's kind of scary to think
that's
about.
very scary. And I've, my first book that came out was through a small publisher, but a traditional publishing route, Ransomed Daughter. I've put out under my own brand, and there's a we can go into it. There's a long story of why I did that. But when you go and do the actual setup portion, like in Amazon, it's one of the buttons. Was AI used in any part of the creation of this project or this process? Now, granted, it's an honor-based system. You could say no and
They
lie.
can't check it because couldn't they, like, if you did something with Tom Clancy and put it into the AI system, wouldn't it do the same thing? Like you could check it by putting a Tom Clancy book through the AI system and go, oh, this, if we put the Tom Clancy book, we get your book. Like, isn't
Possibly. I don't know enough about it to know how they reverse engineer that, but very possibly there could be a way to
I
filter
know
that
that's
through.
how, because I've that one, that's how I first heard of Chat GPT was a
Mhm.
teacher friend of mine said that's how they were catching kids using it, because kids would write these papers, and so then they could put the book, I think they could use the book, maybe they put it into Chat GPT, and it would say, and it would like they would ask the question to Chat GPT, and it would come up with the same paper the kid wrote, and they're like, you got this from Chat GPT.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that, but I've not been exposed to how it actually is happening. But it makes sense. And I mean, back when I was a kid, there was ways to cheat, and people would find a way to cheat, even on tests or quizzes or papers. They pay an older brother to write a paper for them. So, you
It's
know,
crazy what they're doing. I seen
technology.
AI podcasts. Like you could, I saw
Yeah,
there's a Joe Rogan AI podcast, but I
exactly.
tried to watch it and I was like, okay, it's, you can tell it's AI. Like it's close. I mean, it looks real and it sounds real, but it's a little too stiff and robotic. It's not
Yeah,
the same. Like they don't laugh like humans. There's not the unpredictability, and it's a
right.
little too structured and robotic. And hopefully it stays that way, because I like there being a difference, you know?
Exactly. Well, the question is, Chuck, is in 5 years, will you be? Because look at deep fake.
Yeah.
Deep fake stuff 5 years ago was pretty clunky. I don't know. Some of the stuff I've seen this year, that's like Tom Cruise. The Tom Cruise one is a real famous deep fake,
Mhm.
and how they've kind of perfected it. And now, I mean, it looks pretty darn realistic.
Yeah.
And that technology's it gets every moment we're talking, technology's improving. So, and we only know
I'm
what's out now.
That's true. I'm
It,
I'm fully prepared, mentally prepared for this whole podcast thing just ending one day, either because I'm canceled because I grabbed a boob in 1994, or because AI takes over, or whatever, the world ends. Like I'm ready to just, if the world, if the whole thing ends and I got to go live in the woods and the mountains, I'm okay with that. So I'm
yeah,
mentally preparing for that day, because I feel like it is coming in some way or another.
it makes you wonder. It definitely makes you wonder if that will. I mean, just you look at all the world events and what's going on and all the nuclear threats at this point, and you're just kind of like, I joke with people and say, man, I just need to sell enough books that Indonesia, I believe, it's a big difference. It's either 18 or 32,000 islands, like tons of, and most of them are
Ah.
uninhabited. It'd be nice to buy a little island out in Indonesia and put a little camp out there, because it's probably not going to get nuked that far
Did
away.
you
And
buy? How much is the island in Indonesia?
um, I've looked a couple years ago, and they're not all for sale, obviously, because a lot of the government owns a lot of them. But yeah, I mean, there were some islands out there that were in the multiple $100,000 range. That of course, then you have to get a water source if you don't have a
Yeah.
fresh water source. I mean, there's a
But even
lot
just
to.
living in different, yeah, like other countries. Like I know, I dated a girl, then she went to Thailand, and she was telling me how cheap everything was there. There's a lot of
Mhm.
Americans that retire in Thailand
Yeah,
because it's so cheap.
expats.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a list. If you Google it, there's a list of like the best countries to like retire in for an American
Yeah.
with Social Security. And
Yeah.
if you bring in like 1,600 or 2,200 in Social Security, you go to this country, and I mean,
Right.
you get like a 3 bedroom apartment. It's like
Yeah.
$450,
My
and your
uncle
food
retired
budget
in
is like a
Panama.
hundred dollars a week for great food. And
Yeah. Yeah. My uncle retired in Panama, and it was just him and his wife living off Social Security.
yeah,
So, I mean, you can do it.
you can be done, absolutely. And I mean, it's definitely sounds like it's probably not a bad, especially the way I was talking to a friend earlier today. We were talking about costs, and I mean, I can remember, I can remember. Sound like I'm old, but man, you walk in a grocery store now, and one bag is at least $25. It doesn't matter if there's meat in there, just dairy, whatever. You better count on $25 a bag minimum. And it's just like, yeah, and I got 2 kids, and when they're with me for a 5-day stretch or whatever, in the summer we do week on, week off. Man, my food budget for the month is pretty much taken care of within like a week and a half, 2 weeks of having the kids. And because
Yeah.
my son, he can't consume enough food. My daughter's not that way, but she also doesn't want, Fruit Loops. She wants something good. Don't blame her. So it's those weeks that I don't have them, I'm kind of like, I'll just buy a pack of chicken and live off this for a couple nights.
I'd
And
love to be just like mobile and like off, like just have one of those. You ever see those earth roamers?
yes.
Those are so, I want like an earth roamer and just to be mobile and kind of off grid and, maybe like farm some things somehow
Hmm.
or hunt or something or buy some food. And then like, but if something goes crazy, I can get in that thing and just take all my life belongings and just leave and be to the next town or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's and I think with COVID going on, that was definitely a lot of conversations that happen with people of what do we do? And it's like, and I did the same thing, but the truth is, if you're having that conversation and you're not prepared, man, if something were to happen before the end of the podcast tonight, good luck. The grocery store will
Yeah.
be cleared out within a day.
Yeah.
Walmart will be empty by the late evening. I mean, it's just
Well, yeah, and I had this author on William, what is it? Oh, gosh, what's his last name? Fortson or something like that. He
yeah,
writes,
1 second after.
yeah, I had him
Yes.
and he was
He's
talking
actually
about
up in Black Mountain about 45 minutes from me. I've
yeah,
never met
okay.
him, but yeah,
Yeah, he's a real nice guy, but yeah, he's real smart and
very smart.
PhD and I mean he's telling me about this EMP thing and he's like, "Look, I hope that in 100 years or 50 years or 20 years or whatever, people look back at me and say, "Oh, wow, that guy was a total kook and he was totally wrong."
Mhm,
And he's like, "That's what I hope." He's like,
mhm.
"But I hope I'm not right and I hope that an EMP never does happen because if an EMP thing happens, it's like all your electronics are useless and that's how
Yep,
we get around in the world. Like the trucks wouldn't that can bring the food wouldn't work.
right.
It's scary. So
Refrigeration for those
yeah.
trucks, the refineries for the gas. Yeah, so I've read his books, and because I my second novel, so I wrote my first novel in 2014, didn't get published. Wrote the second book, and the second book focused on an EMP, and so I did a lot of research on it. Probably not to the degree that William did, but I researched it a lot, and I mean, I think it's like 90% death rate in the first year
Yep.
for America.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
crazy numbers, and you think, no, it's not really that bad. And it's like, well, if you're diabetic, if you have any kind of health issues, your medicines, as soon as they run out in that pill box, they're gone. There will be no more medicine coming to you.
Right.
And if you don't have food in your pantry, there will be no more. Grocery stores will be empty within 2 or 3 days of everything but the shelving, and people will probably take the shelving for
Yeah.
for
And then
for
how many
something.
people kill each other because they're fighting over like well, they want your food and you have food and then you get shot
Yeah.
because yeah, it's just a mess.
So I have a real quick funny story about that. I have a good buddy who I'll actually get to see in the next couple of weeks. He retired out of fifth group, spent most of the last 20 years that I've known him, and I knew him before he was in the military, but spent the last 20 years pretty much in the Middle East. And they were, when he was active duty, they were at some kind of a Christmas party for someone in the special operations world. And they're at this party, and I guess the wife of one of these guys is a doctor, and so she's up talking to these guys, trying to act like she knows her stuff. And she starts telling my buddy that, my husband and I are preppers. We've got this, and she's listing off everything she has. And she goes, "What do you have in case the shit hits the fan?" And he's like, "I have nothing." And she goes, "Well, you should know better. Why would you do that?" He goes, "Why would I have anything?" She goes, "Because you want to survive." He's like, "Yeah, I'd freaking come kill you and take your stuff and it'd be easy. So I don't need to prep."
Yeah.
And he said this woman's face just turned white, and she was smart. She's a doctor. She realized immediately, oh yeah, if you can't defend all that stuff that you've bought,
Right.
what good is it? Someone will kill you to
Yeah.
survive
Yeah.
or to take your stuff and use it to monetize. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I want my island, and I need also then
There you
a
go.
armada around my island. And geez, I'm gonna have to sell a lot of freaking books.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so is that the point with the book? Is this right? I know you said something like when you write, it's therapeutic for you. Is it
absolutely.
just, are you writing it for yourself? Are you writing to sell the books? Or is there a part of the book is to maybe bring awareness to some of the issues that you talk about? I don't want to give it away because there's some stuff that's like a twist at the end.
Mhm.
But like one of the issues you bring up is ransom and kidnappings that you say in the book that it's on the rise. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah, when I did my research for it several years back, I was reading a lot of stats, especially overseas, where kidnapping, it's something that you don't hear much of in the US media. But you also have to remember the filter that everything's put through in the US media. I mean, if you are, and it's not political, it sounds like it is, but I don't care if you put on Fox News or MSNBC or CBS Nightly News, you kind of end up hearing all the same stories. The spins on them are put a little different, but you don't hear a lot of what's really occurring in the world. So if your news sources are outside the United States, you start reading stuff and go, man, kidnapping, for money is how plenty of organizations survive. And they're not out there. In my book, they're asking for 20 million euros, asking for a lot of money. They're doing that because this guy can afford it. So they can hit him up for a lot of money. And if he loves his daughter enough and they scare him enough, he'll pay it. In other parts of the world where the kidnapping it's not like it's happening to every other person, but it's prevalent. And, they're kidnapping, they're asking for much smaller amounts of money because the people will pay it and make the problem go away, get the person back. But yeah, it's not something we necessarily have to deal with here in the United States. But other countries, yeah, for sure. It probably ebbs and flows based on if they can. It's kind of like the drug industry. The drugs, if they legalize marijuana in the United States, okay, let's move on to another drug. Let's move on to something else that's going to make us a lot of money, basically. So bad people pivot very quickly to continue to make money and thrive, whatever their vices that they're selling or taking or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for the books, I definitely like to have a message out there. I definitely write not so much therapy, but there's lots of stories that have been in my head for years. And so that to have the outlet now to be able to actually get them published and get the positive feedback from readers definitely has been very rewarding. Money wise, yes, it's not a charity. Although if you were to tell me any book I write is gonna just break even, you're not gonna make any money, are you gonna stop writing? I would say no, I don't do it for the money. I sure would enjoy to have it be my full-time occupation. I'd love to be able to afford my island out in Indonesia, but no, money is one of those things where it's necessary. And I like comfort. I like going to concerts. I like traveling. I flew down to Florida 2 weekends ago to go see Shinedown. I like that I had the ability to just catch a flight Saturday morning, found a cheap discount airline flight down there, got a hotel, got a rental car, and I flew back Sunday. So to be able to do that, I have to be able to afford that. But it's not my central focus in life. It's more the experiences, the people that I surround myself with. And so if I can sell books or do well in my job, my 9 to 5 job, and that affords me that ability to travel or to go to the concerts or go out to a nice restaurant, then, definitely much more enjoyable than sitting home poor, eating ramen noodles, watching television.
Right. Well, and so do you think that you could potentially get either this book or some of the other ones into a movie or TV adaptation? Is that the dream? Because is that how most authors really get the big money and kind of get set, is like getting something like, I know Jack Carr, he's had a ton of books, but then the one they did, the Amazon series, I'm assuming he got paid a lot for that.
I'd say it's generally speaking the dream, but again, and Jack's a good example. I know Jack. I was able to, unfortunately, I met him before before he took off. So
I was
I
going to say, because he
established.
promoted one of your books. I saw a picture with him holding up your book and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, he did my show too. He's a super nice guy.
super great guy. Yeah, he was actually kind to promote the Body Man when it came out.
Yeah.
He sent a tweet out last week. I guess Ransomed Daughter's been out for a week now. We're taping this on a Tuesday. It came out last Tuesday, and he was kind enough to tweet out that the book was there. I had someone Wednesday morning message me and said, "Hey, I saw Jack Carr's post and I bought your book." And I'm like, I'd sent Jack a message and said, "Hey, you sold one copy for me."
How do
But
you
yeah,
know
definitely.
before he took off?
Yeah, I was at a book conference up in New York City back in 2017 or 18. I think it was 20, I don't know, 2017 or 20, I think it was 2018. And I hadn't read the Terminal List yet. The Terminal List had just come out maybe a month before the conference or thereabouts, close by maybe a couple months. And so he was known, but he wasn't the Jack Carr that's kind of known now. And there was a happy hour kind of like after the conference panels and all that were over. It was just drinks. There he was. I went up, introduced him. He actually knew who I was before I could get my name out. He knew me just from social media, and we just started chatting. And then by the end of the weekend, we exchanged numbers, and and then as he took off, it was kind of cool to say, yeah, I know his real name. I've been able to interact with him, and he's been super encouraging. What's interesting, and I won't tell his full story on it, but how he got his movie deal, which he's talked about in the podcast, and I've even had brief conversation with him about it, is, you know, like you're asking, is that the dream? For the most part, people love it. Most authors, though, that sell their book rights don't make much money. That's not the way to go to Easy Street. Some do, and some make a lot, but it's not uncommon for it to be, hey, we'll buy your book rights and you get $5,000 either. Hollywood will flow the money, will turn the spigot on, but they also are good at, trying to get a deal too. And, if someone's willing to take a little bit amount of money because they need it, they'll gladly, stiff them out of $100,000 all day long, probably. But for Jack, what happened was when he was in the military, one of the guys that was tied up in the SEALs or whatever with him was coming out. And he met with Jack in his office because Jack was a commanding officer at the time. And, Jack basically said to the guy, what's your future? What are you planning to do? And he just gave him advice. I think he gave him some contacts of, hey, if you're interested in that, maybe you need to call this person. And then met with them and then pretty much didn't think about that conversation again. And then several years later, his book's coming out. And this guy reaches out to him and says, hey, Jack, do you remember me? And he goes, oh, yeah, of course. And he goes, do you remember what you said to me when I left the military? And he's like, no clue. And so this guy recounted to Jack their conversation. And he said, that conversation set me up for where I then started a career in, the movie industry. And, Jack's like, well, that's great. And the guy said, can I get a copy of your book? I'd like to give it to someone. And Jack's like, yeah, sure. Who do you want to give it to? Chris Pratt. This guy had got in with Chris Pratt, and that connection, basically
Right.
paying it forward of helping this person and not helping them because you wanted something, helping them because it was the right thing to do, is what, because people like to say, well, Jack Carr got lucky. I don't believe in luck. I think Jack Carr and so many other people plant a seed. They do something and that seed grows. Now, some people plant seeds and nothing happens. Absolutely.
I
But
do a lot of that.
yeah, me too. But it was that contact of what happened
Yeah.
with that person that eventually bloomed into him getting, a deal with, Chris Pratt. And Chris Pratt bought the rights. And then when Jack, and this is where Jack's unusual in many ways, but not only did they buy the rights for his book, but him and, Chris established a good rapport. And Chris actually brought Jack on to be like writing scripts, be an executive producer. So he actually was able to keep his voice in the story, because that's the other thing common with Hollywood. They buy The Body Man or they buy Ransomed Daughter. They can strip almost every portion of what Eric Bishop wrote out of that because they've bought the rights. And that's why some authors, I don't know if you know who Brad Taylor is. He's another former military. He was Delta Force. And he's not sold. Last I had talked to him or heard, he's not sold the rights to his Pike Logan character because he knows unless he gets creative control, which is extremely rare, they can do anything they want with his character. And for the limited amount of money they're going to pay him, he wants to have that control of what Pike is. And so Jack's been fortunate where he's been able to maintain a lot of that strict
That's
control.
good. Yeah. Because Hollywood is definitely ruining a lot of things right now with their just weird agenda. I don't know. I find just some of the stuff they're putting out is just complete garbage, especially with all the remakes, and it's just bizarre. So yeah, I would definitely want some kind of control if it was, unless it was a studio that I trusted, that I looked at some of their other work and said, yes, you guys have done a good job. Right. But yeah, if you just finally sold your creative, hard work and all that process to somebody and then they just butcher it, oh, that would be. I know Stephen King was mad some of his stuff, he was not happy with what they did to it.
Mm,
And I think one of the movies like he directed, which is really weird to think about. But
mm,
yeah, I mean
interesting.
it's a weird game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's this is so it's one of those businesses where yes, I think the dream is for a lot of authors. Well, what ends up happening with a lot of authors is they want to be able to be in a position where they can write full time. And the the not the dirty secret, it's completely out there and open. Is the secret is to be able to be a full-time writer and have that pay your bills and live a comfortable life is extremely difficult. I was telling someone about it recently because I think it was Penguin and Simon and Schuster, two of the big five, were going to merge, and the government brought an antitrust suit against them and won, where they weren't allowed. Basically, they ended up not merging, but in the course of that suit coming out, a lot of the books were obviously exposed of sales, and the sales numbers that came out were not like, wow, this is an amazing business. It was 10 or fewer books on average sell over 1 million copies. 500 books on average sell over 100,000 copies. The average published author sells 500 copies of their book. The average self-published sells like 50. Just numbers that you're just
Way
like,
lower than I thought.
oh
Dang.
yeah. Well, and the self-published, especially, you've got to remember Amazon's a double-edged sword, and I'm using them for my own purposes. I'm putting, I put Ransomed Daughter out. It's not only under Amazon, but that's where most of my efforts are going. Um, Anyone can upload a book to Amazon with minimal effort. I was telling this. I was actually on a podcast last night, and I was telling the host that if I put my mind to it this week, I probably couldn't. I don't know that I could write something as big as Ransomed Daughter, 35,000 words, but say a short story. I could write a short story between now and Friday. No problem. Would it be something that should be published? 100% absolutely not. Could I? Yes. Could I then create a cover on Canva Pro? Could I format it? I already got formatting software to format any type of novel I want. And could I upload it to Amazon by Saturday and have it for sale by Monday and charge $2.99, $3.99, whatever for an ebook? All day long, I could do that. Doesn't mean I should do it. But so the
Yeah.
entry point for Amazon is so easy that hundreds of thousands of people a year put books up. And
But
maybe
how
they
many of
do it
those? So,
multiple.
so the most of them only sell 50 copies.
Yeah, because you figure there's probably a lot of people that sell two or three or four, and then some sell a couple hundred. And
Yeah.
you start
Wow.
averaging all those together. And that's where I was blessed with the Body Man. When the Body Man came out, I was above even the publishing average within 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh wow.
So my numbers were really well, which also gave me that encouragement of, because when you first put something out, absolutely you have imposter syndrome. First of all, do I deserve to be published? And then also you think, am I gonna fall flat on my face? Because once your name's on a book cover and it sells really horribly, that sticks with you. Well, how many copies did the Body Man sell? And I haven't looked at sales numbers yet for Ransom Daughter, and I'm not going to for a period of time because I want to focus on marketing. I want to focus on doing my social media, talking with folks. I don't want to be thinking, the numbers aren't as high as I want, because maybe they are higher than I'd like,
Do you find
but I
that
don't want.
frustrating though with the social media and stuff too? Especially like I just find myself with a podcast. I'm like, okay, I've had some big, Jack Carr. I've had some big names on the show, and I
Mhm.
just feel like I'm not where I feel like I should be. And then you look at guys like Jack Carr, and you look at their social media, and it's insane. He's got hundreds of thousands, and he posts stuff, and he gets all these likes, and I'm just like, okay, like I know I'm not gonna be Jack Carr, but like I
Mhm.
just feel like I'm so far away from that stuff that I'm just like, what the hell am I doing? I almost feel like it's a waste of time. Like, just give me that Earth roamer and get me off the grid.
Maybe your Eric Bishop interview is going to skyrocket you to Joe Rogan levels.
Hey, if the book
If so,
takes
that'd be
off,
great for both of us.
yes, I would love it. If the book takes off, then that would be amazing.
No, it's a good point. Yeah, and that's where, and I'm just as guilty of it. That's where comparisons hinder you a lot of times more than they help you. Yeah, I think it's good to look at what others are doing, but I think that's where and I'm preaching to myself by saying this. That's where you have to say, you know what, be the best version of Eric Bishop. Put out the best book you can. If it doesn't sell as many copies as you want, hey, maybe the story wasn't as good as you thought. So maybe you need to do it better. Maybe you need to market more. Maybe you need to branch out, whatever it might be. Um, yeah, but it's hard. It's hard because when you put hard work like you do with the podcast, and I was involved in a podcast years ago, and so I saw all the behind the scenes numbers, and it was like this can't even generate money. Why am I spending hours and hours a week, you know, publicizing this thing, and it's not, you know, going to generate pennies, if that. So yeah, it's hard. So I think if you're passionate about something, I think the passion will come out. And then I think it's perseverance. Once you have that perseverance, does it mean you're going to make it? No, but you will fail to make it, not fail, but you will fail to make it if you quit. So if it's something you really believe in, then give it what you have. And you
Right.
temper that too. Even I did that with my first book. I was married when I was writing my first book in 2014, and I knew I wanted to write a novel, but I didn't want to, you know, when can I write a novel? Because I had a full-time job. So I could write when my wife and kids went to sleep. And I did that every night for months, from 10 o'clock until God knows what hours, some nights, some mornings, really.
Yeah,
I would
didn't you have
write
some sort
and
of
write.
rule where you didn't even watch TV for like 6 days a week? You would.
The Sabbath, instead of probably, well, I probably went to church at the time, but you know, my Sabbath would be to sit down and watch like Breaking Bad or something. I'd watch a couple episodes and I wouldn't write on a Sunday night. Again, after everyone went to sleep, instead of writing, I would just, but I got myself in a bad habit and bad physical space because I pushed myself so hard. So when I wrote the second book, I completely changed my philosophy. I still had to write when everyone went to sleep because I didn't want to interfere with my family. But I would start at 10 o'clock, and my cutoff was a hard midnight cutoff. Even if I had still words to say, I wouldn't let myself. But then I was ramped up because, you know, I just killed someone, or I just
Mm.
brought a hot woman spy into the story, or whatever it was. So then I would have to transition myself to go to sleep. And for me at the time, my way of transitioning was one of my favorite things, which was watching Seinfeld episodes.
That's what
So
my girlfriend and I are rewatching that right now. Right before every time we go to bed, we're like, all right, let's throw on a Seinfeld because we'll watch some like crazy horror movie or documentary or something, and then we're like, ooh, we probably need to like wind down a little from that. So that
exactly.
the
So
other
that
thing
was
you
my
could do is
transition point.
you could go to bed earlier and wake up super early and write. Right. I know some people do. I'm not a morning person, but
I'm sure somebody could. It wasn't
yeah.
me. So no, I when I'm up in the morning, I feel alive and it feels nice, but my creative stuff works at night.
Hmm.
So I've tried to get up a few times in the morning and try writing, and the utter stupidity that comes out of my brain at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning will ensure that I do not get a book published, basically. So yeah, for me, I'm much more of a nighthawk. I was talking to my daughter the other night, and because I didn't have them this last weekend, and I said, yeah, you know, honey, I was in bed Saturday night by like 1:30, and she's like, Daddy, that's late. And I was just like, it's kind of early for me on a Saturday night, actually. I said, I was pooped. I was tired. I had a book signing on Saturday. I've been kind of going all in for weeks now. And I was just like, my body just told me, hey, guess what? You'll have to sign the books tomorrow or work on whatever it is the next day. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Do you find yourself encouraged by growth? Because that's one thing for me. Like when you say the podcast, the pennies and stuff, like that's how it started for me. But now
Mm-hmm.
that I'm on YouTube, I found for podcasts, YouTube is huge because you can post clips. And then
Right.
like I just had a clip, it was crazy. It got like 40 some thousand views, which was insane for me. And that's like
Mm-hmm.
huge. Like so, but like so I've been seeing the podcast grow. Like I'm seeing the subscribers grow, the
Right.
small income is growing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so do you see that with the books, like from when you started in 2014 or whatever, do you see like the number of books you're selling each month? Is that number growing? Because that would be encouraging.
So with books, so the Body Man is the first one that got published, which was in 2021.
Mhm.
So those first 7 years I wrote,
Oh, you
I
didn't put
didn't
it on
sell,
Amazon or anything?
didn't do anything. No, the quick story on that was I think self-publishing is because I'm doing it now, so I better believe in it. When I first got started, though, I wanted a traditional publishing deal. And the reason why I wanted the traditional publishing deal was twofold. One, I knew it was going to be a lot of work to self publish a book, and I just wanted to focus on writing. And I knew I had very limited free time. I was married at the time, my kids were little. And then also I wanted my books to be available in airports and Barnes and Noble, and I didn't want to have to deal, because if you self-publish, that's not an option really, or very limited option. And then going through the experience with the small publisher I went through, I just decided I had at that point then written so many things that I've learned a lot about the industry. So maybe I can broach self-publishing now. And but what I did, which I wouldn't have probably done years ago by learning all the lessons I did, is I said, well, if I'm going to self-publish, I'm going to do it what I thought and still think is the right way, is I'm going to stay in my lane. What am I good at? I'm good at writing stories, and I think I'm pretty good at marketing. I'm not a cover designer. I'm definitely not an editor. If you read my first drafts, you probably think I'm not a writer. I'm not good at graphic design and all that. So I hired out all those pieces, and I just focused on story. Assembling, it's easy. I found some really good. Atticus is a software I used to actually design the inside of the book, and it's idiot proof. I mean, you dump a Word file into it, it formats it, and it kind of does some stuff funky. And then within 3 hours initially of learning how it worked, I can take anyone's book right now and within an hour have a pretty good manuscript worked out. It's got to be edited. I don't do any of that, but
Yeah.
the format itself, the page numbers and
Okay.
transitions, all that stuff, the title page, it does it all for you. It's idiot proof. So I'll do that part, but I wanted to make sure, and I created a legal entity. I went out and created an LLC. I got an imprint. I got logos created. So I tried to be as professional about it as I could, and just learn the kind of the business side of it. And fortunately, I have a finance degree and a business background. So just, and then you try to treat it as a business, because when the first book came out 2 years ago, I mean, I threw extra money on it that I shouldn't have, and I was just kind of throwing darts. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll get a Facebook ad, or I'll do this kind of ad, and I just pissed away money. I pissed away marketing material that didn't generate any sales. So now that it's all on me and I've kind of learned those lessons, now I target things a lot more different.
Oh,
You know,
so
I don't.
what is it? Because I noticed that too with the podcast. When I first started, I was doing Facebook ads, and I was like, okay, this is getting me Facebook's likes on the Facebook page of my podcast, but that doesn't really translate to people listening to it, or like the Facebook groups. Now that is a good place to share. Hey, if you're a fan of this guest, I just had him on my podcast, then they would
Yes.
watch it. But for you, what did you learn with the Facebook ads that didn't work? What did work?
Um, just I the first few ads I created were very busy. There was a lot of stuff there, so it would pop up on someone's feed, and there was just a lot of words to read. And of course, at the bottom it says "Buy now." Yeah, but the graphic has so much stuff going on that, I myself, when I see a Facebook ad pop up, I don't go on Facebook very much, first of all, but when I do, I'm normally like, look at it, and if it doesn't catch my attention, or if it's got stuff on there, just scroll right past it. So now when I make them, they're much more simplistic. You got a book cover, you got a couple keywords, and it's just buy now, and hopefully they click that buy now button.
Does that work?
So I haven't started them yet for Ransomed Daughter. I was doing them for the Body Man towards the end, and they seem to be working pretty well. And for Ransomed Daughter, because time is on my side, wasn't trying to make any bestseller lists, or knew I wasn't going to make any bestseller lists. I was looking more long game. And so I kind of did all my marketing for the release and could get me in the first couple weeks or month. And then I'll start doing more paid ads, as like my podcasts start dying down and people aren't retweeting my posts or other people's posts. That's when you'll kind of pull in the marketing side of saying, okay, now I need an ad to be popping up on Instagram or Facebook where people go, hey, this book Ransomed Daughter's out. You need to buy this thing. So I can tell you in a couple months offline, we can have a conversation with look at numbers and tell you, hey, was it successful?
Yeah.
I know it's done well so far just from the traction I've seen.
That's good.
And what my pre-orders were. My pre-orders were really solid. So,
Will Jack Carr promote this one too?
He did put a post out there. Yes.
Oh, nice. Very
yeah.
cool.
He did. Brad Meltzer, who is one of my kind of literary idols. He was very kind and put posts on all his social media. Yeah, the support from authors, and that's the other thing, and I've talked about in other podcasts, is when I first started writing in 2014, I figured, man, this is like probably going to be cutthroat. People aren't going to help you. You're taking book sales away from another author. 100% not true. 100%. And part of that too is, if you think about it from if you're a reader and if you like to read, you don't typically read one book a year.
Right.
Most readers are pretty voracious. I mean, they're they're reading maybe a book a week or a couple a week, or some people read a book a day if they're really just, in can read that quickly, which is insane. So
Well, I know
most
for
of the
me,
time,
I do Audible. Is this book going to be on Audible? Because that is amazing. I can listen to that, and especially if it's like as somebody I'm having on the podcast, a lot of times I'll listen to their book at double speed or time and a half, and then I can
mhm,
take notes as I listen. It's amazing.
yeah, probably will at some point. So I had someone I really wanted to do it, and they gave me a price quote, which I think was probably completely reasonable amount of money. But the thing with Audible is you can't set your price. So I kind of looked through the range of what they might charge, and okay, how many books am I going to have to make just to break even? It's not like how am I going to make a lot of, how am I going to afford that island in Indonesia? No, it was just how will I get my money back? And I wasn't really comfortable at the time, and so I said, well, let me see how it sells, maybe for the first couple of weeks or month, and then if things are moving along and I've gotten the money then to just pay outright, then I don't have to really care how strong the sales are for it. So I'd like to have as an option within a couple months, and that might be a good way also a couple months down the line to say, hey, now available in audiobook, because I've definitely have had requests for audiobook, but I haven't had like hundreds and hundreds of requests. If I did, I probably would have invested the money and known that I'll probably break even at the very least with it, because it's where I had a very successful author tell me like 2 years ago, because my first book didn't have an audio book. The publisher wouldn't do it. I even offered to pay half the talent's fee, because I
Wait, why
thought,
you can't just read it yourself?
with the contract I had, no, the publisher had the rights to put the audiobook out or not put the audiobook out. And I, I'm not with that publisher for a
Okay,
reason.
yeah, I was gonna say
We we
because it just
we
seems
but
like
we butted heads on a lot of things.
you're losing on sales if you don't have. Because there's certain books for me that I'm like, I really, I mean, I read your book traditionally, but I really try to avoid traditional reading because I'm
Hmm.
a terrible reader. Now, Audible, I can fly through it, like I said, on double speed or time and a half. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of books where I'm like, oh, this isn't on Audible. Sorry,
sorry.
I'm not
Yeah,
gonna watch it or read it because I mean, I just have a huge list in my Audible. There's books I have in Audible that I've bought. I just don't have time to listen to them all, but
to listen to him. Yeah,
I will get to those eventually. But yeah, if it's traditional, I typically won't unless it's for the podcast or something. Then I'll
right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yours is
Yeah,
short too.
so
That's the other thing. It's kind of nice. It's only like 167 pages or something.
very, yeah, it's a novella, so it's kind of it's a full story, because obviously you
Yeah.
read it too. It's a full story, but it's very there's no filler. I don't have room to kind
Yeah,
of
I like
do a
that.
lot of,
It just got
yeah,
right
me
to the
too.
point. I was like, all right,
Yep.
let's get on with this. And there's a like I said, there's a cool twist which I won't reveal. And it's action packed. It would be perfect for a movie, I think.
Chris Pratt, you listen to this? Come
Yeah.
on, who's the Hollywood people out here?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I don't know if Chris Pratt, yeah, who would you have to play the girl? I mean, yeah, it would be fun to, I mean, the possibilities. There's got to be there's so many streaming services and things that somebody could make some money off of it.
I know. I joked with it recently talking to my son. It's like I want Tom Cruise to buy the rights for the Body Man, because the Body Man, I could see him at his stage in life being that type of a role. So again, Tom, if you happen to catch this podcast, call me.
Yeah, I'm sure he
We can
subscribed
work
to
a
my
deal.
podcast. I mean,
He should be.
he should be. He should be. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I always end promoting a charity. Is there a charity you want to promote here at the end after people buy your book, of course? If they have any
Yeah,
money in the
absolutely.
economy, they can.
So there, actually, I talked to a friend tonight who is a writer as well, Steve Stratton, who was with my same publisher with the first book, who actually served in the military for many, many years, retired. And he's actually in about 3 hours from me, attending an event tomorrow night that's for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. Um, and they're having an event. Actually, Brad Taylor is hosting it down in Charleston. There's a bunch of authors coming down, and they're trying to basically raise money for our heroes, really. So
Oh,
yeah,
awesome! I love it. Yeah. Well, if you have money and you can send some to that, that'd be great. If you're struggling, then hang on to your money. You're going to need it because this economy is rough. But if you can
yes,
throw a few if you want to buy a book, buy this book because it's a good book and it's probably pretty cheap. I'm assuming I didn't have to pay for it, thankfully, but
Yeah, the paperback for Amazon is $9.99. The
Oh,
ebooks $4.99.
oh wow, really? Only
And
4.99? That's
there's
great.
a hardcover out there too. The hardcover, which actually and it's not normal to have a hardcover for a novella.
Mm.
This is actually the proof. My hardcovers are coming tomorrow. I ordered a big box of
Oh,
them, so they'll be here
cool.
tomorrow. But I liked the hardcover on this. Hardcover
Yeah.
on this is $16.99. So it's
Okay.
but that's obviously a little bit pricier. But yeah, the ebooks $4.99, pretty darn cheap. And the paperbacks are good, are a good size. I like the way. I was really pleased how it turned out. I wasn't, again, part of it was a learning curve of saying if I'm going to put something out myself, a novella is kind of a good way to learn all the steps. And I'm going to mess some stuff up so I can learn some lessons. The biggest thing with the novella and why I did it that way is from an editorial standpoint, because I read through this story a lot of times this year, even read it a couple weekends ago just to see if I enjoyed it. No editing, no looking for mistakes, just do I enjoy the story? And I loved it. But I can read through it in just several hours versus my first book, The Body Man, was 450 pages. That took me night after night to be reading it, especially after work and the kids go to bed or whatever. So yeah, the novella is a fun format. And I've had that question, are you going to do it again? And yes, I just don't know when. Um, as of right now, the follow up to my first book, The Body Man, which I have the rights back to the subsequent books for that. The follow up is called Breach of Trust, and that's coming out late spring, early summer. And then next year, so about a year from now, the follow up to Ransomed Daughter will come out.
Okay, yeah,
And
because I was gonna say there's a sneak peek of the breach of trust in this
yes,
at the end of this book, which is kind of cool. So
yeah, absolutely. So I got a sneak peek to that, and then I'll put a sneak peek to the book that comes out next year in the back of Breach of Trust as well. It's just
okay.
kind of whets people's appetite, and then that book is still got some work to be done with it, but that one's going to follow Troy in the group, and there's a couple missing weapons out there that we don't like to be missing out there. So him and his team, no one can find these things. So they're hoping Troy and the Omega Group can track these weapons down before someone else has a little fun in the Middle East. So,
Cool. Well, I look forward to that. We'll have to come back on the show when that comes out.
Would love to.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Eric. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Chuck. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the full podcast episode. Please help support our guests by following them on social media and purchasing their products, whether it be a book, album, film, or other thing. And if you have a few extra dollars, please consider donating it to their favorite charity. If you want to support the show, you can like, share, and comment on this episode on social media and YouTube. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can give us a rating or review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. Finally, make sure you're subscribed to the show on YouTube for the video versions and other exclusive content. We appreciate your support. Have a great rest of your day and shoot for the moon.